To conquer us? You are talking like a sorcerer. Inka, it saddens me to tell you the empire that your forefathers built will not be inherited by your descendants. Man of the future. Who else but them? Unfortunately, that is not what is going to happen. Why not? We have the power to continue on the path of greatness began under Manco Capac. Yes, Inka, however, the soul of the empire was built with mud, and not with the boulders of your fortresses. If you had forged the endurance of the stones in the makeup of your people, today we would carry your legacy as Incas and not as Indians. That sounds ominous and contradictory. We had no more lands to unify, but rebellions to quell. Man of the future, tell me of those people from that faraway world, if they are going to come. Inka, they were already in the New World in the last year of your father's reign, 1448 to 1493, and they will not be coming to safeguard your lineage, let alone preserve your empire. If they were here, they should have helped us to advance along with them. Inka, the world follows one pattern, the rise and fall of civilizations. Ours, perhaps, began during the last crusade in 1250, and ended when Spain was liberated from the Moors in 1492. In the long process of freeing themselves from their occupiers, Spain forged men of fighting will and adventurous spirit. With their arrival to the New World, we became the next infidels. How did they happen to come to our continent? It all began in 1486 when Christopher Columbus exposed his thesis of navigating west to get to the Indies. 16 years later, the Kingdom of Spain decided to help Columbus with money that they themselves did not have. They had to borrow from the elites that controlled the world, the Catholic Church and the Knight Templars. In August 1492, from the misty port of Palos, intrepid mariners unfurled their sails to let the wind take them where nobody else dared to venture. After less than 2 months of uncertainty, when they thought all else was lost and close to mutiny, a man shouted "Tierra! Tierra!" On the 12th of October 1492, a new chapter in the history of our round planet was unfolding. A day of infamy that should be forever forgotten. But we, descendants of the very people who were almost annihilated by the newcomers, celebrate that occasion, instead of mourning their unwelcome discovery. After such a fateful sight, they disembarked on an island not knowing that they were putting foot in a new world. With that unwanted event our fate was sealed forever, as Indians. Why do you speak of them in an apocalyptic manner? Couldn't they have been the emissaries of Wiracocha? They might have been all you can imagine, but they were not demigods. Why is it that everything that is unknown to us must be the works of God? Because the gods created good and evil, and they can be cruel if their tempers are fired up or benevolent if we do sacrifices to appease their ire. Inka, we all have the ability to do good and evil in order to take our bearings in this unknown state that we call life. It is the balance of these two forces that give us our humanness. Do I have to fear the awful events that you are prognosticating? No, Inka, I am trying to make some sense of what happened to us, and see what to do with the rest of our humanity that we lost after the conquistadors came to our lands. Man of the future, why must you be so intent in exposing the reason for our decline? Because, knowing why our end came to pass will bring us closer to recover what we lost. Maybe, no one is responsible for our downfall. We did it ourselves for not being united, and we are still disunited for accepting what they did to us. How can we be responsible for our own demise, when it is obvious that the old world people were the ones who caused our end? The purpose of your trip should be to make them accountable. Otherwise, how are we going to regain our dignity? You are ambivalent about your enemies. Inka, my purpose is to let the descendants of the invaders know of our plight, and that someday they must make reparations to the Indians. You are taking a difficult road to get to that end, knowing well that we should recover what was taken from us by force when they conquered us. Perhaps we should, but it will lead us nowhere. Let us go back in time to the progenitor of our disgrace. There, in the beautiful town of Trujillo, a love affair took place between a gentleman warrior and his domestic girl. Out of that union, Francisco Pizarro was born in the year 1477, a man for whom, after my recent trip to Spain, I began to feel differently. Because nothing can be accomplished by harboring ill feelings toward historical figures, their descendants, or the Spanish people of today. You are preaching to yourself. Why not admit what they did to us was barbaric, and don't try to mend their iniquities so passively? We are humans and we should take revenge, otherwise we will always be the same Indians that they think we are. Keep on telling me about this man of the old world who, perhaps, is coming to follow the prophecy of the great Huayna. No, they came and forced on us the teachings of another god from the old world. Let us continue with Francisco Pizarro, who as a child was reared like the Inka lords treated their illegitimate children. How else can one treat a bastard? No different than the legitimate ones, for children are not responsible for the deeds of their procreators. Man of the future, throughout the ages, races, and religions, illegitimacy has never been approved. I don't see how can you defend it. Do not misunderstand me, I am not supporting the idea that one can have children at random, commitment must be there for the welfare of a child. Nevertheless, the notion of illegitimacy is what ended with the empire. How could that have affected our history? Because the lawful son of an Inca had more rights than his half-brothers. For the same reason, Francisco was raised as a herder of pigs. Not a humiliating trade as history makes us believe, since these animals were the wealth of his land. Like we, that the more llamas we have the richer we are? Exactly. However, some people pride themselves in avoiding the so-called lower type of jobs and live off the labor of others. A legacy left to us by the Spaniards, many of whom are too proud to do the jobs that they consider below their dignity, and the hard work is left for the Indians to do. But Francisco was a working man or, better yet, a ferocious mercenary. That he was illiterate, so was the rest of the world in those days. Not knowing how to write or read doesn't diminish one's innate intelligence. Writing is just a tool to express what one feels, and reading is a way to perceive what others think. If a person doesn't have a chance to obtain an education, that should not be taken as a stigma of ignorance, as it is insinuated with this man of Trujillo. Kunter soul, tell me about this man's soul. Inka. I just did. His upbringing is what formed his soul. Thus, in that faraway hamlet of Trujillo, I must have stepped over the same cobblestones that he walked on, implored in the same churches where he prayed, and saw the same ancient buildings that he had seen. Then and there, I realized that he had accomplished what no other better men of his times could have achieved in spite of his infauste childhood. What do you have to say about his legacy of destruction? That is another matter. As long as we make others culpable for our misfortunes, we will never root out ourselves from the dungeons of our own doings. Then how are my descendants going to face their future? We will only change through evolution, and that will take a long time. Sepa Inka. We are coming from the north. We bring you bad news. The Chachapoyas have killed the representatives that your father left. Man of the future, it looks like all I will be doing in my reign is quelling uprisings instead of uniting them. Have you tried to find out why, and prevent this from happening without humiliating your people? I give them everything they need, and they still rebel. I don't understand why.